All right, hello everybody. So I'm Juha, and I originally had an hour, but now I have half an hour, so I'll try to get out of the slides so we can have some questions also. But yeah, so here's a little of my background. So I've been doing games ever since I was 12. So originally after the Hello World, the first thing I did was a game. And that's been the thing. I've worked with about 100 games so far. And I built game education, but I've worked in numerous companies also. I've had a lot of roles from actual game development, being a programmer to being a designer. And currently I'm the general manager of the Playstack studio in Helsinki. So I still think like games is definitely the only reasonable thing you can do with computers. No, seriously. And the other thing I want to always remind game developers that if reality would be fun, we wouldn't be making games. So if you end up in absolutely horrible trouble, it might be because of you're trying to emulate reality. And I come across this sometimes. But yeah, so that's why, you know, when you make games, you need to emphasize things. But 3 years ago, I was also looking for a publisher or funding. So I was on the other side of the table, so to say. And I had a team, we had an award, and we were looking for publishing and funding. And there was lots of things I came across, and some people say that publishers, they're only there to take all your money, and they won't focus on your game. You know, they take your game, they put it out, and they forget about it. And why should you use publishers? Time for them is over. Come on, we can do it, everything ourselves. So, I don't know how many here is looking to develop a game. They look to publish themselves. Wait, yeah, maybe somebody. Yeah. Yeah. And how many of you work with publishers so far? Some, yeah. Yeah. Okay, but often I come across that the developers think our game is super great. I mean, we just put it out and it will do its magic. We'll get the millions and we don't do anything else. We just put it out and it will come back the next day with enormous numbers. It might be just over 20. And then like the typical like programmers, artists we have, but then the marketing and the business side is lacking, and that's a quite common case. And if we think of these questions like, well, publishers are not to take all your money, they're looking to do that together. So that is our business. And we look to help you achieve that. So that's one of our goals. And yeah, I think on the focus part, that kind of applies with some publishers, depending on the publishers. I mean, some of them work maybe more like a machine, that they take in loads and loads of games, put those out, wait for the metrics he has done, take another one and another one and another one. And if some of those have somewhat better metrics, then they focus on that game a bit more. That might be the case. And yeah, in a way, I'd say there's more room for publishers, because now, like, to make your game stand out, it requires extra effort. It requires people who are focused on that and know that's what happened with other games and how to make them differentiate. So that's kind of like one of the reasons. So, yeah. But something I come across quite a lot, like when I meet developers, it's kind of like, in a way, it's a one-way discussion. So I don't get these tough questions every time, which I think I should always get of being a publisher, because publishers are different. So what I realized, like after meeting publishers myself, I started asking, like, what's your biggest title? And how many titles have you or the company shipped? And I would actually find really big variation there also. And have your games been featured? And what's their spend on a title, and you know, any numbers or dates they can have, and these are really valuable information. And what I found at the time was, like, the publisher deals can vary a lot, like from the 50-50 to some of them even asking like 70-30 deal. And one of the most interesting cases I had was somebody was saying, like, as a publisher, they'd take the 70%. The guy who was talking to me was working on his first title, and he was saying he'd spend maybe 1,000 on it. So I wasn't that much convinced on that one. So, but this is like what's the other end of the spectrum there was, and the spend could be really, really difficult. And like the company's track record could vary a lot on what they reach with their previous games. So when you meet publishers, I think you should urge to look on these questions and get an understanding on their like capabilities also. Quite the problems that developers have and come across again and again are like, how do we stand out? This is the common problem we all have. Like, how do we make our games stand out? And sometimes, well, even here I hear some people how they made their game stand out on using some different kind of approaches, which is always really good, being innovative and trying the new ways. If we talk about timelines, that can be very, like, I think yesterday in the pitches, their timelines they were there, but not in every game. But that's like something that kind of needs to be asked many times, like, what's your timeline? When will you have the game out, and what will be the status of it? And sometimes the developers don't really give a clear answer on that, so it's a bit left in the air in that sense. And then, like, also things like what make us concerned is like if some of the people are working on part-time. It's not always a problem. I mean, I started my first games doing it part-time, but it can mean that these people might be taken to other things, or they don't have the room to commit to this later. So it's a bit of a question mark then for the future. And quite often the teams, they're looking to get the user acquisition done with us, and they might have a little bit of budget for that, but like, will that ever be enough? Like, if it starts kicking off, and where to focus on that? If you have the 1K, 5K in your budget, like, if you don't have the expertise, like, how are you going to do that? Because it's actually an iterative process. You put out the first creatives, they maybe don't work. You put the second set, and at that time your 5K might have gone already when you finally find how to do it. And like, getting games featured is always like always a bigger thing, and that definitely helps. So then these questions and discussions sometimes I hear people are talking about if somebody knows somebody from somewhere in that sense. And these things like on company-wise, like, how can we get to the next level? What's the how would we get advice or help in making our game bigger in many aspects, like the community part or the biz dev or so on, to help the game to grow and go forward. But yeah, sometimes I definitely get the last line here that the game will be big without a problem, without the publisher will manage to do it. Yeah. Or then they've done it and had this 100 or so downloads, and now it's time for a publisher. But maybe the one thing I usually say is like, you can do that way, and then if you come with your metrics which didn't work out, it will be a bit more difficult. And the other option is to first talk with the publisher and see how should we do this to maybe reach some more nicer numbers. So when coming goes pitches or meeting teams, here's some advice on how to help on the actual matter and getting to the point. So actually, to be clear on things yourselves within the team, like, when do you think you'll have this? Who are the team members? And all these. And quite often I get in a situation I meet the team, and then they talk about their lore. I mean, that can go on and on and on and on. And I really don't, I lost the track after a few moments, and I'm eager to see the game. And that's always the thing, like, I'm always eager to see the game and get to the game, and then get to the lore if the game makes sense to me. So, and also, like, I think on the pitching yesterday, one of the questions that came maybe most often is like, what do you need? And that's also something good for you to define, like, what do you actually need, and to identify that for you. And to have a real business plan is also quite good, because, yeah, of course we can look to help on that, to do that, but if you have that figured out, you've studied the market, you know how to get your game forward, that will definitely help. So what I kind of mean of this is you thought it out, like how will this thing work? What will make this stand out, and what is my business segment? And so, I mean, the other part is like with developers, we've done something, we need help on this, and it's all around the place, the thing. So the more structured you have this, that helps in convincing. But definitely it doesn't mean like if the game is good and the marketing part is lost, then that's something where publishers can definitely help also. Something I also ask is like, what's the track record of the team? So if your team is like fresh from college, you're working part-time, and there's no previous games you've done together, that brings some questions. It's not a blocker, but it can help if you have a track record of X amount of years and you delivered together X amount of games, and you have some information about that, can definitely help. And I think quite a lot here I saw that people have studied their market and they would know like reference games or closest reference or their rivals, so they had looked into that. And definitely, yes, you need the good, great games, so that's the foundation of all. And when playing the games like here, I do focus on the gameplay, and the gameplay feels good and nice. That is a good thing also, definitely. I mean, sometimes you come across these games where everything else might be in place, but the gameplay doesn't really work. It doesn't really click. It doesn't make me excited. And I can see there's a lot of problems to fix the gameplay, and I'm sure cannot be done within the team, because if they worked on it already a year and they still have the basic gameplay issues, then how will that be solved? And yeah, definitely like in the team you need a presentator to do those. And the last thing here, like sometimes I run across teams have their timeline which goes to 2025, something crazy. I mean, you make it a hyper next console title and you might have it ready in 2025, so it's maybe not that yeah, we're not sure what it will mean then. There's many years for things to go wrong and right, so there. I think what in Playstack we kind of do things a bit differently, or at least try to do it differently, is like we approach also in a help way. So we don't completely expect like full ready packages, but we look to also help. So that's also why I like to see games in early stages, because then we can work together on a longer term and make to hit the target. And so, and then there's also the funding part included, and we also have technology part. So we have some of our own tools, but like sometimes we come across games where they have everything in place, but they have trouble with like analytics or getting like a multiplayer lobbying or stuff like that. So we can help on those. So if there's some technical obstacles, but yeah. With us, like we look to, rather than work as a machine and take in loads and loads of games, we look to more like sign the games we believe in and then focus on those. And if you look at some of the games we've had them like a couple of years, and during that couple of years, the first UA didn't that well maybe perform, but then we saw that there's a potential. So working with that game during the years and actually make them now positive in that sense. And then we have the basic localization, marketing, QA, all this kind of sets available. And yeah, and so far our featuring rate has been quite good because of the connection. So I'm Helsinki based, but our headquarters is in London, and the people there have an enormous track record and they know these people there. So we've had a lot of featuring in that sense. And also like when I saw loads of publisher contracts before they acquired the company I had, and I became working with publisher, I saw a bunch of like publisher contracts, and some of them are like, you know, I could still be reading them and still not be sure what they actually want to say, but we aim to have it more clear and easily understandable, so there's no surprises in that sense. Yeah, and if we look at the games we look about, so maybe like if you think of publishers, like quite often a game we find which has good traction, it means there's also other publishers there. So maybe to avoid that and to be ahead of the game, we try to find those games before that happens. And And we're not like platform or genre restricted, so we're pretty much open to many kinds of games in that sense. And yeah, this is a bit of older. We have Sniper vs. Teams where we launched it and we got it featured, and this one worked pretty nice. Now lately we have Mortal Shell, which has been our latest success and has delivered quite well for us. I've been quick today, but now we have time for questions.
Juha said, any questions? No questions at all. No? Okay, either was really clear or nobody.
Maybe it was clear.
Okay, yep.
Hello, Juha.
Hello.
Would you be interested to be like for our Baltic Explorer project, kind of like very important mentor? We already kind of like ask you for checking our one pages in publishing for our teams, and then you kind of offered us already to take a slightly look if they did it correctly, because Baltic Explorers will hopefully join JDC in March by all means, and we hope it's on site. So would you be interested in that kind of, let's say, almost position and join Baltic Explorers for a fun ride?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun being here, and I just really like looking at early stage games and to look how I could be helping there. So that's definitely something I enjoy doing, and that's something I've done a lot in so far. So yeah.
So what is the Playstack's advantage over other publishers? So what's your strongest points?
Yeah, I think it's the focus. So we want to focus a bit more on the games we work with, and then like we just don't take the game in, put some UA and see those numbers, but we also want to help the developer, like looking the game pre-launch on what we could possibly improve. And if some of the areas the developer can't deliver, then we can help in there on providing some technical help and that kind. And I think maybe one thing also is like we're not kind of like platform restricted, and also like we open to games a bit earlier maybe than other publishers. So we don't always expect to have the ready thing, the full package.
Thank you. I have a question. If there's ever a time where it's too early to start putting your game out, like marketing or starting to create like a community, whether there's maybe a bad look for the publisher when they are putting out very rough stuff out there?
Yeah, that's definitely true. We have to be quality aware also, but like that's maybe something like we could even meet now and then we talk like months and months, maybe even a year, and during that time we look into these, and if we think the quality isn't there, that's the feedback you're going to get, like you need to improve on the quality so we can take it forward. I mean, otherwise the game might be pretty much what we're looking for, but then these and these would be great for us, great to be fixed.
So hi, yeah, so is there any situation where you think like it's actually more beneficial to go without a publisher, like doing self-publishing? I'm not talking about obviously big companies, you know, that kind of self-publish, but like small indies. So is there ever, like, you ever feel like there's,
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the startups in Finland, like they gather like in the millions, and then they hire people to do that. So in a way, they kind of like get the expertise in-house. So they definitely don't need a publisher in addition. So maybe in one sense, like if you're smaller developer, then it might be useful for you. And then if you think career-wise, and if you keep making games and none of them ever is published, what will come out of that? But if you make those games and get some of them at least published, and even if the numbers aren't that good, that will give you, more leverage for the future. So yeah, but I mean, that's the thing, like, what I also struggled with, like, when I had my game, I thought this is the best idea ever, and this will be super big and huge game thing and that, but then, like, I knew if I put it out, I will never get traction to it. I mean, people will not find it, and for people to find it and to have the word to mouth or any kind of way for it to go viral, that also requires a lot of work and also innovation on that area, on how to make it spread.
Hello, Juha.
Hello.
How long does it usually take from the kind of initial contact with the game studios to kind of reach the final publication deal? Or is there sort of like a typical timeline here? And to continue on that, how important do you think is kind of building trust between the publisher and the game team?
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely vary. It depends on the game state, and it depends on how. I mean, that's also a thing, like, if the publishing deal is very complex and it takes you, days and months to even understand what it says, then that can slow things down. So, but sometimes we can be really fast on that. I mean, if the game we think is ready, the publishing deal is clear, that doesn't have to take that long at all. And whereas, like I said, we have some developers we worked with like a year or so, even so longer times. So yeah. What was the second part? Sorry.
Trust.
Oh yeah, trust. Yeah, trust, definitely. I think that's something I also want to achieve with the teams, that there's a mutual trust. I mean, it could be that we work a year together and then the developer goes to another publisher, like after all the advice and effort. I mean, that's a risk, definitely, that might happen. But I think I like to see it as a journey together, where we go and try to reach the mutual goal. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey.
How do you and other publishers in general handle the immediate post-launch period, where let's say the sales are just starting to take off, and like let's say a month or two of runway after release, where there's a lot of immediate player feedback and potentially bugs, and maybe the payments aren't coming in yet through the processing, and that stressful moment after launch.
So you mean the moment, like, when the developer kind of pushes everything for the launch and then they have limited runway after that?
Exactly, and also
Yeah.
they have so much on their plate with what the game being released and all that includes.
Yeah, I think that's part of the planning, to think of how we achieve that, and that the developer doesn't end in that situation, because it's not in our interest that after the publishing the developer goes bankrupt and then the game is like left without that. So that needs to be taken into consideration. And then in the feedback, I think when those come back in, then it gets reviewed and discussed. Like, this is what we feel are the biggest points that should be fixed on, and to help this game improve.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, what's the biggest mistakes and red flag pitches you've seen that have just, like, you've met them and it's been like, oh no, so we don't repeat the mistakes of the people before us?
Yeah, I think the one is, like, there's like slides and slides about the law and talk about that, and you don't really get to the game like after like a certain amount of time. And then when I ask about the team, like, I've heard sometimes, like, yeah, there's me, and then there's my friend. Is he fully on this? No, he's part-time working in another company, and then the rest of the team has gone already, actually, when you start to ask the details, so you really don't get a clear picture, or you get the actually what you find out about the team is that there actually isn't a team, really. And then there might be that what they're looking for is also like very, after asking that a couple of times, you still don't understand what they're actually looking for and what they'd like, because they don't maybe know that even themselves. So those are cases, or yeah, things like those definitely are, yeah. And funny thing, like, sometimes what happened to me, I go and play some developer's multiplayer game, and they go and whack me completely every time. so I never get to really play the game because I die immediately, and again I try and then I die again also. So yeah, they outplay me completely.
Okay, any more questions?
I was thinking, shall I ask this question or not? This will be a provocative question, so be prepared. Juha, how do you rank yourself? Are you the publisher who is willing to take the risks? Or you are more the publisher who is trying to stay on the safe way?
Out of those, I'd say more the risky one, because if we do like the safe thing, I think that's what majority of publishers do. So they kind of look for games that might have attraction already, and where there's the kind of the indicator that this has the commercial success potential. The problem is that every other publisher will also be there, and they'll be fighting on that. And I think that's also why we look to take a bit of more risk and find games that we feel have potential, and then make those become games like these. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions?
Hello again. So usually when people come and publish or want to get their games published, they usually have like a strong team of coders and artists and like developers. Do you think that Playstack would look into a team that has like a strong marketing and a design core but doesn't have like the technical skills, or is that outside of what you would publish?
Well, that's kind of like what we look to fill. So quite often the team has the development skills but doesn't have the marketing part. So that's our business to help to do that and take the game forward. But we also look to help on the technical side. So we kind of like look to fill those both. So yeah.
Any more questions?
Seems like it takes a moment in the beginning before the questions
Yeah,
start
to
rolling
warm
in.
up, to start, like an engine.
Yeah.
Okay, so if no more questions, then thank you so much for sharing the insights.